There have been a number of studies done about increasing disconnection that is created through social media, increasing rates of loneliness, anxiety, depression, and even suicide. This doesn't just affect younger people, it affects people in all age groups. Do you remember who your first friend was? Picture the person in your mind. Okay, so you have a person in mind. How did you become friends with that person? So remember, like, how you met. How many of you are still friends with that person? Anybody in the room still friends with their first friend? Wow. Okay. You too?
Yeah, we don't talk too much, but when we see each other, we are still friends.
Okay, so you're still friends. And it's interesting, only 2 people said that they're still friends with their first friend. And for those of you who are no longer friends with your first friend, why not? What happened? Bodhi?
There was a fight that kind of irreconcilable differences.
Oh, a fight and irreconcilable differences. That's one reason friendships break up. Any other kinds of reasons? Helen?
Stopped contacting each other for like 10 years.
Okay, you stopped contacting each other for about 10 years. Why? Was there any particular reason?
No, we just don't know what to talk about.
Okay, don't know what to talk about. So if there wasn't enough to talk about, or if you had a fight, so friendships can end. For those of you who are still friends with your first friend, why? How come you're still connected?
Cynical or?
The real reasons, whatever they happen to be.
Well, he was always a nice person, and we probably don't communicate enough for him to do anything to make me mad. So.
Okay.
No, I'm not trying to be a jerk about that.
No.
In that case, that friend, yeah. I mean, we still have warm regard for each other, but he lives way far.
Okay, so maybe he's not a close friend still, and you've moved. Clearly, you must have been living in closer proximity at some point. Across the street from each other was your first friend, and that's probably how you met. You were neighbors. And you still have warm regard, but the distance is too big to maintain a deeper friendship, perhaps. A more active friendship. Okay, so yeah, no, more active and deeper are 2 very different things, as we will find out. I'm asking you these questions because I find the topic of friendship really fascinating and extremely perplexing, decreasingly perplexing as I've gotten older. But I want to tell you a little story before we dive into the substantive philosophical content about all these issues of friendship, like who do you become friends with, why, what keeps the connection going, what breaks the connection, and other big questions, especially ones that are raised in the main reading that I had sent out by Tara Smith on egoistic friendship. So before we get into that, I'm really curious because when I was growing up, I had almost no friends. On the right, that was me standing outside, always on the periphery. You know the movie The Outsiders? Well, that's plural. I was the outsider for all kinds of reasons. Looking on at groups of kids doing things together, and when we were playing sports, that made sense to me. I got sports. I liked playing sports. But they would go off and do other things together, and it didn't really matter too much to me because a lot of times they were doing things that just didn't interest me. I had my own interests, and they usually didn't involve other people. But sometimes kids are mean, and the few times I tried to make friends, they would get angry at me and pick fights, or they didn't believe the same things I did or care about the same things I did. They wanted to talk about, who's getting what kinds of toys, and I'm like, well, did you read this book, A Wrinkle in Time? When I was 11, that was my favorite novel. They didn't care about that. And so I was like, okay, as long as you're not picking on me or being mean to me, then whatever. But I just didn't get them. That was me on the left side of the screen. I mean, these aren't literally pictures of me, as you can see, but they represent my bewilderment at this thing called friendship. I would be up in a tree, away from people reading books or drawing. My friend, my first friend, Sherlock Holmes. Who are you? A book, yes. Okay, it sounds like you are
I didn't tell my first friend is yeah.
Oh, so, me too. My first friends were in books. They were fictional characters. The very first one I remember being totally wowed by was Sherlock Holmes. I was like in 3rd grade. And then when I read A Wrinkle in Time, Meg Murray and Calvin O'Keefe, I especially favored Calvin because he was very sure of himself and always tried to help Meg see that she had lots of awesome stuff inside of her because she was doubted herself. Pippi Longstocking, very feisty. And then my favorite, Howard Rourke. It's like, why can't I find people in real life like this? Maybe one of these days. Well, eventually, I did start resolving some of the questions I had about friendship, like what is friendship? How do you make friends? How do you keep friends? If you don't want to be friends with somebody anymore, how do you unfriend? I mean, and I'm not talking about the Facebook, that's a whole other thing we'll get to in a minute. But there are all these questions that swirled in my mind as I was getting older. And as I got older, I started caring more about it. I went from being alone up in a tree and pretty self-contained to becoming increasingly lonely because as I was learning about things, as I was reading more, I wanted to talk to somebody about these ideas I had. I wanted someone to understand me. I wanted to know what other people were thinking. And a lot of the kids my age didn't really care about that kind of stuff. So I waited, and eventually I met people like Bill in 1991, Stephen in 1994, Richard in 2015, and there's someone who you met last night, Marcia, who I met in about 2012. So at this conference, I have 4 adult friends who I made over the years. And so how did that happen? How did I go from being this kid up in a tree, not really knowing anybody or connecting with anybody? So for those of you who had friends young and are still friends with them in some way, that's a really a great treasure. And I wish I'd had it, but I didn't. But, you know, you have the life you have and you try to figure it out. So how I figured it out was largely through trial and error. But as I got older, I was like, okay, there have got to be people who write about friendship. One of the big ones is Aristotle. In his Nicomachean Ethics, how many of you have read Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics? 1, 2, I expect all the professors to raise their hands. And of the rest of you, Bodhi has? Okay. Well, of the 10 chapters in Nicomachean Ethics, 2 of them are devoted to friendship, and I'll talk a little bit about that view today. And then in Rand's novels, I would argue, she demonstrates development and maintenance and rupture of friendships in many contexts. So I learned a lot by reading about that, answering some of my early questions about friendship. The rise of social media. Oh, I see some heads shaking out there. Just when you think, you know, in the everyday course of life, navigating friendships and figuring out that mess is complicated, the rise of social media has added a whole other dimension. When you have 24/7 access to connecting with others, there have been a number of studies done about increasing disconnection that is created through social media, increasing rates of loneliness, anxiety, depression, and even suicide attempts and successes or failures, as they may be. And this doesn't just affect younger people, though it disproportionately does, especially for those who are in the digital generation who grew up on social media. It affects people in all age groups. One of the pieces I had sent out as a recommended reading is Facebook making us lonelier? And it opens up with someone who's 80-something years old, and they found her dead a year after roughly she had died. her computer was still on, and the only people she'd been connecting with were, she had been previously in the movies, and were fans who she was responding to. And there was nobody close enough in her life to realize for over a year that she had actually died, and the computer was still on. It was, I feel chilled just recounting the story, and it just underscores that here's something that people use to connect, and in some ways it makes them more lonely, anxious, and alienated from one another. Which puts a whole other series of questions on the table. What questions arise for you when you think about, some of you shook your head about social media and friendship? What are the new questions? I had questions when I was young. What are the new questions that arise because of social media that specifically relate to friendship? How does it make it more complicated?
I mean,
Gabrielle?
some friends like request that you keep contact like what can I say, constantly in social media, because they base the friendship in contact social media contacts.
Okay, so they base their friendship in the social media contact, the visibility on social media, and they want you to be on 24/7. Yes. I sent you a message 3 minutes ago. How come you didn't respond?
Yes, exactly.
But hey, excuse me, I had to go to the bathroom. I was talking to my significant other. I was reading a book in preparation for a presentation. So could you wait more than 3 minutes? It doesn't mean I hate you.
Some of them say, "Oh, why all the times we talk, that was me that started the talk. Oh, you never started that."
Who's the initiator?
Initiated, yes.
Yeah, somebody, if you're, I initiated the last 17 times. I'm keeping count because I can see in the message, it keeps track of the timestamps, right? Yes. So you can prove it.
Yeah.
I started the last 17 times, so you pick up some slack. So it's upping the demands. It's very demanding, it sounds like. Thelma.
I think social media, you don't know who your real friend is because most people just click on or follow you because of your aesthetics or what you post. So you don't know who it's. Do you like the info and in personality or whatever?
Okay, great. So the ethics of the like, you're clicking like, what is it you like about me, right? And so, especially if you only know them through social media, do they know the real you? Why are they liking you? Why are they following you? Is it just based on the appearance, which is very highly curated by some people? I'm not one of those people who, good morning, Marcia, talk about another friend. So, who's bringing box of Joe? Thank you. See, this is the kind of things friends do. So thank you, Marcia. So if anyone who wants to come up for coffee, you're very welcome. Thank you, Marcia. So I can hear in how you're the distress that comes through to me and what you're saying. Like what do you like about me? Is it the appearance or my personality? Like do you even know who's on the other side of the computer screen with all these curated images and appearances?
I had a friend that was annoying me because she tagged me something and I didn't repost it. She was like, I posted you and you didn't repost it. It was a big thing. I'm like, listen, I didn't see it. Why did you repost? I felt so long.
Okay, that gets even more complex. So somebody's they're looking at the timestamps and how many times they initiated and you didn't initiate conversation. This one's following whether or not you reposted. You didn't even see the original post. How could you repost? Right, so she expects you to have not only dropped the context of the rest of your life, all she's caring about is this narrow electronic reposting thing and is taking that as a signal of, oh, I guess we're not really friends. You don't care about me because you didn't repost something that you didn't even see. Yeah, so this is very stressful. I can see why social media can make people feel more lonely, alienated, anxious, and start getting depressed. Like, who are my real friends? Yeah, so on social media, so you can choose what to show the world, or a select group subset of the world. It doesn't have to be public setting, but whatever it is you're choosing to show, it can be highly curated and show your highlights and not you at your lowest. And so, who are they really seeing, and who are you really seeing? So this is we're just unpacking just the tip of the iceberg of how complicated. When I thought things were complicated when I was a kid, when I was showed you the difference between me being up in the tree reading a book and wondering what those kids in that group over there were doing, that seems really simple back in the golden days before pre-social media and pre-internet. And this just makes it more complex. Marcia?
First, I want to apologize for being late. Secondly, I was thinking this is all of this is like a supercharging of social approbation. They just said this, that in other words, recognition from other people is the most important thing to get.
Yeah, yes. And so it makes it very other-facing and self disappearing, or self being hijacked by everybody else out there. And by the way, who on earth is out there, right? So and even if there are people who you don't know who they say they are is really who they are, right? Impersonators, or you're only seeing a thin veneer of who they want to believe you to be. So, Richard, and then I'm going to go on to the next.
It has this otherism to it, and the importance of others to it. It has a kind of tribalism in it too, because the algorithm will suggest other friends. So when you think about how you normally find friends, you meet them and you get to know them. But how it pops up and it'll say, 14 other people are connected. And you have the option, you don't have to, but you're looking at, wow, we're connected to 243 other people. Maybe I should join that group.
Okay. Yeah, what's the through line of the individuals who are the mutual connections? You're like, maybe that person knows all those people I went to the Students for Liberty conference with, or that person's mutual friends with me with 14 Prometheus fellows. So maybe, okay, so we might, so you have to scan, and it is kind of tribalistic. Like, you have to place the context of the group of friends now and how that came to be. Steve?
Flashbacks to Bill's lecture the other day about a negativity bias. So notice that we start talking about social immediately, functionality, those weird people, right? This connection. So I'm wondering if the other shoe is going to drop, so to speak, and we will balance correctly. Because I was thinking about the older woman you were mentioning. There was a kind of sadness about her lonely state, and her computer is on.
Yes.
Say about one to say, like, compared to what?
Yeah.
Older people 50 years ago who were shut-ins and disconnected. Do we have a comparison loop before we make this?
Yeah, and I'm not a social scientist or a social psychologist, but they're from Jonathan Haidt to Sherry Turkle. Sherry Turkle has a book called Alone Together. Like the phenomena of people all sitting at a dinner table in real life together, and they're all clicking on their phones, not talking to each other. Although sometimes they're actually texting each other because there's someone who they're all talking about. They don't want, it sounds like I know you guys do that. And who's at the next table, but they don't want them to overhear. So sometimes they are communicating with each other, but in a different way, instead of slipping notes under the table. But there is another shoe to drop, because personally, I'm on some social media. I'm not on Twitter, X. I don't use Instagram that much. My primary ones are Facebook and LinkedIn, but mostly Facebook. And I'm very careful about how I use it. I go on for only a certain number of minutes a day. I say happy birthday to everyone whose birthday shows up that day. But I also do it in real life too, to the people who I know. And it's meaningful to me. That's why I do it. And I don't select the automated fill-in. No, I don't want to auto-suggest. I'll do it myself, thank you. I know how to wish happy birthday to different people. So I do that, and then if I have something to share, I'll put it up. But a lot of times people tag me. They want to bring my attention to, oh, there's this article I shared, or I have a question to ask you, or they tag me in an event we were at together. Thank you. I saw your LinkedIn post about the Rowan Rand presentation the other day. And so I don't want to show my appreciation or to respond to something or say, I don't have time right now. I'll get to you in 2 days. Right? So I use it as a vehicle of communication. For me, it's positive. I make it a win-win. And I have very clear limits, and I do never get involved in political debates. It's like if you want to have that kind of discussion with me in person, I'll sit here for 5 hours and argue with you. And I will love it. And I want to talk to you face to face for that time and know that it's not somebody on the other side of the computer board going like this, being a troll. You know, he'll say nasty things because I'm behind a computer screen. She can't do anything to me. You're looking me in the eye. Are you going to say the same thing? I want to talk to you, not some troll behind a screen. So there are wonderful ways it can enhance your life, but you have to choose to use it that way. So yeah, there is a negativity bias, and I'm glad thank you for that connection, because we went right to the bad. I kind of primed the bad up here. But it's partly because it raises questions about friendship. It just makes an already fraught conversation of something that matters to so many people, clearly, even more difficult and complex. Bill, you had a...
Yeah, no, you were talking about the autocomplete. What is annoying me now is that you go to write something and the autocomplete actually autocompletes what you were going to write. And it's like, great, now I sound like AI.
Oh, well, oh dear, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because AI is not I. It's not intelligent. And I'm not going to get into that right now. But yes, the autocomplete thing is very annoying because to me, it's incentivizing laziness on my part. And I don't want it to come across like AI. It was like, looks like you clicked one of those AI things. I will never do that to you. Even if it actually ends up being the same thing, I promise you I will not do that. And people who know me know that I mean that. So there are other people who might not, and you know them too. So they'll take the quicker thing for whatever reason. I don't want to be too judgmental about that. But you can see just this one slide has instigated like how complex friendship has become in this day and age. Well, to bring it back to the reading that I had sent out, hoping people got to read the Tara Smith Egoistic Friendship article, if you thought the questions were even complicated by this, oops, dope. The egoistic friendship piece raises the ante on the complexity of questions about friendship, especially if you're defending ethical egoism. And here, when Bill was talking yesterday about the challenge of egoism, the challenge for egoism, Smith puts a series of questions on the table that have to be answered by, this is a conference about Ayn Rand's ideas and, the implications of objectivism, et cetera. A big one is, how can an egoist be a friend? They've got big questions to answer to. Aren't they committed to putting themselves first? Aren't egoists too wrapped up in their own concerns to really care about other people? You may have heard, I know I've heard these things said to me in the past, like, really? Like, how? So you're just going to like instrumentalize me, right? Because egoists use people. And when we can't use you anymore, we'll drop you like a hot potato. Right? So, well, I think Rand's corpus is massive, and she doesn't have something systematically put forward in like a series of articles about the topic of friendship, but she does have lots of illustrations in her novels, and she has some things that she says here and there in different essays, whether it's in Art and Sense of Life or in the Ethics of Emergencies. It pops up in unusual places. She'll make claims about friendship and love, and what Smith has done is systematize all of that material into trying to help the egoist defend what I call the astonishing thesis. the value of friendship is made possible by egoism. If you thought egoism was incompatible with friendship, the objectivist position is, guess what? Egoism makes it possible. You need egoism, properly understood, not your caricature or straw man egoism, but properly understood. Well, how is this case going to be made? Here's our roadmap of the main bulk of the ideas. And I have my handy, I'm not an artist, as you can see, drawing on the board to help anchor the conversation. Part one is kind of a frameworking, and this is where the Aristotle part's going to come in. So for those of you who know Aristotle's ethics, it'll be a nice summary of his views about friendship. And it'll be, and for the rest of you, hopefully it'll give you a crash course in Aristotle's. I find it's one of my favorite parts of Aristotle's corpus. His lengthy discussions about friendship are truly remarkable, and I think if you dove into them, you would really glean a lot. I must have read 100 times, and keep finding new veins of gold to tap. So I think his views about this, which Aristotle Rand refers to as the greatest philosopher in history. And his views deeply influenced her in more ways than I think she realized. And I think his views on it, we're going to see really bolster her conception of human relationships. So Aristotle is context. And then part two, love is selfish, is one part of the argument. And the love is selfish part is about me as the subject. So friendship is about relationships, a certain kind of relationship, right? There's romantic relationships, work relationships, friend relationships. So in any of these, there's a subject, me, an object, you, and then the relationship between us. So I kind of divided the material that Smith presents into three parts. The first part, love is selfish, is about me as the subject. And how is love selfish? Because we're all used to hearing that love is selfless. Love is about giving endlessly, unconditionally. And her view is quite the opposite. Part three, well, the focus is going to be on you as loving another for his own sake. How is that possible on the egoist view? Even if you can make the case that loving another is for my self-interest is of selfish value for me, how can I also at the same time love another person for his or her own sake? And then there'll be a part about trying to flesh out the nature of that valuing relationship between the two, and it's what I call constitutive value. Rand, I think, calls it relational objective value. Smith calls it contributory value. And I'll explain when we get to that part why I use the word constitutive. And then I'll do another drawing on the board with my inferior drawing skills, but it'll get the point across. Okay, on to part one, the nature and kinds of friendship. First, this is Aristotle's account. In summary, a relationship in which there is reciprocated goodwill and the two people are aware of it. It's one thing if, I have positive regard for one person and that person has positive regard for me, but we're not aware of it. We're not yet friends. So it have to have awareness of the reciprocation of the goodwill, right? You could call it mutual esteem or affection, and it's experienced between equals. And what Aristotle means by that is that you're kind of on the same wavelength, and as we're going to see, he has different types of friendship. And if they're not evenly matched in the types of friend you're looking for, the expectations are going to mismatch and cause a lot of friction. So you need to be looking for the same kind of thing. Also, he's not talking about, in this context of friendship, relationships between parents and children. That's a different kind of loving relationship, and you wouldn't necessarily call it friendship. How many of you are like your parent sent you a friend request? Okay, I just saw that. Some people go, it's like, yeah, okay, so that's why it's like, when I got a friend request from my mom, I was like,
in my family.
Yeah, okay. So, but you could see why Aristotle, like, so the kind of equality he's talking about, it has to do with, like,
Yes.
it's not like the kind of relationship where it's like, okay, a parent-child, you wouldn't call them friends. It's like, that's my mom,
Yes.
right? Mom. And when some people say, my mom's my best friend, I was like, wow, that's, maybe you mean something by that. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but I wouldn't say that about my mom. She's my mom. That's it. And that's perfectly fine. It's a different sort of relationship. And I think that's what he means here. So, and importantly, this last point, who are aiming at gaining some value. Oh, he's a forerunner to Rand. We're going to see in just what kind of way. But it's a very broad account here. So it's general. It's got some key elements. It's very broad. Look at Rand's account through the way Smith summarizes it. A relationship between two people marked by mutual esteem and affection, so far sounds like Aristotle, concern for the other's well-being, pleasure in the other's company, and comparatively intimate levels of communication. So this version ups the ante a bit. We're going to see that Smith's account here is a subset of the kinds of friendship that Aristotle explains. And just to let you know ahead of time, the kind of friendship that Rand and Smith focus on here is what Aristotle will call character friendship. You're going to see very soon what's meant by that. The first kind of friendship Aristotle talks about are utility friends. And on his view, all of these forms of friendship are good, but they're good in different sorts of ways. So none of these are bad. He's not trying to disparage them, but they are different in nature. Utility friends, they're useful for obtaining an external good from one another. So who would like to tell me a little bit about what's going on in these two pictures? To like show what utility friends look like in action.
If you can help with something, they're always there to help you carry.
Okay. Yeah, carry the load. Somebody carry the groceries in for you. Yeah, exactly. Prepare something for you. That's a power tool over there. I think it's a power drill. Can I borrow your power drill? I'm doing something. Or, you help somebody in with the groceries. And maybe next time you go away, the person's like, oh, thank you for helping with the groceries, or bringing a meal over. I'll make sure to water your plants while you're gone. Right? It's just being neighborly, and maybe that's the extent of the interaction. Perfectly fine, but it's limited to that friendly interaction for that particular good. And maybe you don't know too much about one another, but you do know you can count on them to, reciprocate and to help out in a pinch. But because it's only connected by that external good, those are fleeting, easily dissolved, and they last as long as the mutual advantage lasts. So, for example, if that lady were to move to a different state, she's not going to get her plants watered by that neighbor, right? They just don't live close enough, and they probably won't stay in touch. Nothing wrong with that. Now you have new neighbors. You developed a similar kind of friendship. So that's utility friends. A different kind of friend, he says, are pleasure friends. They differ in one regard from the utility friends in that you spend time with them because you enjoy doing a particular type of activity together. So it's a little bit more involved, right? Instead of just like, exchanging the power tools, and maybe I can borrow your ladder, quick exchange. You go hiking with them. Or maybe you go for walks on the beach and you like to eat ice cream cones together, and clearly they're laughing. Maybe they share a sense of humor and tell jokes. But that's all that they really share in common. So how many of you have like hiking buddies or fun buddies or go to the movie buddies? Okay, if you don't like these kind of activities, what do you do with your pleasure friends? Shoot pool. Oh, play pickleball or racquetball.
Go for a workout. At the gym.
Oh, a workout at the gym. Okay, so you enjoy doing these kinds of activities with these people, right? So you have your workout buddies, you got your pool shooting buddies, and that's great. Or, you go to art museums together kind of buddy, Okay, you like that? Okay. But you don't do other stuff with them. Yeah, and that's perfectly fine, Aristotle says, and you're getting value. And it's reciprocated, no harm done, this is great, it enhances your life. But just like utility friends, you like the person because of that shared interest, it's very narrowly focused, and that's it. Right? I can guarantee if like that girl's jokes start going bad and they're friends because she thinks she's funny, it's like, I was like, dude, you were funny, what happened? Right, okay, suddenly they're not hanging out anymore, they're not walking on the beach, no more laughter, it's all tears, whatever it is. So it'll dissolve if that shared interest is no longer there. Or if like someone says, you know what, I think hiking is, it's just taking up too much time. I need to do a PhD in philosophy. I don't have time for hiking. You will not see them for 10 years. I assure you. Right, because like, oh, y'all asked my hiking buddy. That's okay, one did something else. But, but sometimes people disappear because they drop that interest for whatever reason. And that's fine, right? So these people come and go. There's a special kind of friend who's really the centerpiece of this conversation. Aristotle on character friends. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on here, and it's going to pay in dividends a lot because we're going to see a lot of these points show up in how Smith helps us answer all those additional puzzles about how can an egoist be a friend as we work our way through. The fundamental thing that this is anchored in, unlike utility and pleasure, is valuing the other person for the other person's character. What do you like about me? Why are you following me? Was it my personality? Is it me? Me. And we're going to say a lot more about who is me in just a little while. It's when you value the other person for his good character. That is central. And this is going to be core to how we go from, oh, Richard, you're going to love this. I'm going to use the red dot. Finally. This is a new toy. I've never used a clicker before. So, okay. So we have these, this probably looks familiar to all of you, right? You meet somebody in a class and you realize, oh, that guy asked lots of good questions or saying things that I think are really interesting, or I want to talk to this person more, and suddenly they're talking more and more. And before you know it, decades later, they're still talking. They've gone on life's journey together. Wouldn't it be awesome to go from here and someday be there? Wow, how does that happen? How does that happen? And the astonishing thesis the case is gonna try to be made here is that egoism makes that possible. But before we get to how egoism makes it possible, these take a long time to form character friends. Because if you're it's one thing if, utility, oh, I see you have a power drill. That's fast, or you see that someone is funny. Okay, or I heard you like art museums. Okay. Somebody's character, that takes a long time to get to know, to see, because someone's character is demonstrated over time. It's what's known as diachronic, the Greek diachronos, through time.
Over the bad happenings and not the good ones.
Yeah, or whether you to find out bad character or good character, sometimes people can show one little bit of who they are at the beginning, and then suddenly, like they'll talk a good game, they'll say all kinds of nice stuff, and then later they betray you. You're like, whoa, yes. Okay, you showed yourself through time to who you really are. But whether for good or bad, it can be good or bad, hopefully good. And then if you discover bad, then whoa, we're stopping this.
I was saying we know our friend's character, and bad bad stuff happens. Not the,
Oh,
yes.
oh, okay. So if you're experiencing bad times, are they going to still? They're not fair weather friends. Okay, they're going to still but that shows up through to when you say certain things. Are you going to live up to it? So are you? And so this helps us figure out what is a real friend. Are they just going to be there when times are good? Or are they going to do all the difficult labor, the hard work? Friendship takes work.
Yes.
We're going to say a bit in a little while about producing spiritual values. Producing spiritual values of friendship takes work. It takes time. It takes paying attention. You said this 2 years ago. I see you not acting that way now. Who are you? Right? Who are you going to show yourself to be? So it takes time, and also it takes a lot of time. It's time intensive to get to know somebody. Delma?
Regarding what you said, why do people, like, you've been friends for a long time, or probably I did something wrong to you, then people just go, oh, you showed your true self now, and it just destroys or deletes the 10 years of good build-up in showing you. I'm of the perspective, like, at the end we're still human. Maybe they made a wrong decision, or they just acted because they're human. Why do you have to throw away all the 10 years of our friendship?
Yes.
And you just assume I've always been a bad friend. I was hiding myself because of one mistake I did.
That's an excellent point that you're raising, and we're going to get to the issue later of like how to judge friends, and to if people trip up, like what we're going to unpack here, what's involved in being a real character friend. And if somebody does something not cool once, okay, bye, out of here, right? That's you have to take into account, and that's part of the taking a long time to form and to going through rocky periods, because we're not infallible, we're not omniscient. And sometimes we don't function at our best. Does that mean we have to throw all the value away? And so Thelma raises a great question. We're going to see when we get to the last point what Aristotle means by helping to actualize the best in us. And part of that has to do with I've seen you do really great stuff. You contribute a lot of value. I know you got the good stuff in you. Let's get back to it. And they will work it out with you. They won't toss you aside at the first. So this is why, actually going to the next point, they're durable. Partly because it's anchored in character, and who you are in your character is much more durable than, right, I could dye my hair purple, right? It doesn't change who I am. But my character, you can't change on a dime. That takes a long time to form or reform. Or if somebody's made mistakes, right, to, work your way back to who you want to be. So, but they're durable because they're anchored in character. Unlike the other two, which are not anchored in character. They're anchored in something much more fleeting and non-essential to me. But this also makes them rare and few in number, because how many people put in the work of, first of all, making sure they have good characters, so they attract good characters, and all the hard work of maintaining a good character, or a relatively good character, as you're working to improve it over time. So they're durable, but they're rare and few in number, but also because of the time-intensive nature of them. How can you distribute the time of your life over all your values, including your friendships, when you have a limited amount of time? So when people say, oh, look, I have 2,500 friends, I was like, what? Maybe on Facebook, whatever that means, 2,500 friends, right? If you can count your character friends on one hand, Aristotle thinks you're doing really well, because you're spending a lot of your valuable time that you can never get back. It's the most important non-renewable resource in the universe is your time of your life, as Bill said yesterday. And you're choosing to spend it with the few people who have shown themselves to be your character friends. So, but that's part of what makes them durable. Marcia.
Can I just go back to your comments about Facebook?
Yes.
And this is the positive to me, is that you're able to keep in touch with people who you met and you knew and maybe you really liked them, or you had a lot in common, but they live really far away, so you still can be in their life to some extent. That, to me, is one of the main positives of it.
Yes, and thank you for adding that to what I had said about the positive value of Facebook before, because, see, Marcia lives in Chicago, and I live in Orlando, Florida, and before that I lived in New York City. I was just at breakfast this morning saying to Professors Hicks, Klein, and Salzman, I wish we all taught at the same university together, because then I'd be teaching with my friends. But we're spread all over the country. And so we really treasure these in-person moments, and we keep in touch through social media. So when you have we have something to build on. I knew these people in real life before the internet existed. So, well, for Bill and Steven anyway. The other two, I knew them in real life even after the internet existed. But what makes it durable and possible, what helps enhance the Facebook value for me, is that I already knew them in person and had built up, right? That took time, communication over time, and you see people acting in different contexts over time. It helps them prove themselves in new contexts, like how are you going to respond to this new thing that I didn't see you in a situation in before when times are tough, like Gabrielle says. I never saw you tested in troubled waters. How are you going to shine through it together or not? Does somebody fall apart? So you don't know until the circumstances come up. So it's just, it's gathering information. It takes time. And Aristotle introduces something that sounds, this is 2,500 years ago he's writing. This is way before, and this is why Rand points out that she thinks he's one of the greatest philosophers in history. He realized the necessity that you need to love yourself first before you can love another person, whether it's a romantic partner or a character friend. This is because he thinks if you don't recognize or understand yourself and your values, how can you recognize the values in another person? Right? We see it's a relationship. It takes two to tango. And so you see it in yourself, and you can see it in another. If you don't recognize something in here, you may miss it out there. He thinks it has to be grounded in loving and appreciating yourself. And he talks about people who loathe themselves. They don't have character friends. He calls them base people. They're people and they're ashamed of themselves. So what they do is they surround themselves with folks who are definitely not character friends and who may be partners in crime, so to speak, or people who are just pleasure friends, to distract them from themselves because they don't want to sit and introspect and be faced with what they've done that they're not happy with themselves. So the more you loathe yourself, the more you'll hide that, he thinks. Aristotle is really psychologically perceptive. And he said if you don't love yourself, you will hide yourself because you don't want people to see. You will be ashamed. And then you'll just keep everything on the surface and not be connected to people. You can't form character friends if you hide yourself. You have to be proud of who you are and want to find people who value those things with you. So he really thinks that self-love is going to be the grounds of it, and that this is such a beautiful phrase of his. He says, a friend is a second self. Because you're recognizing a lot of what you value and treasure in the form of another person. So in some sense it's like, oh wow, that's what it's like to have my values walk around in the world outside of me and not just be in my head. And isn't that person pretty amazing? So that plays into something. Aristotle didn't use the phrase psychological visibility, but he does talk a lot about perception and perceiving your friends, and how much delight we take in perceiving our friends do well. We see them, and we see the awesome stuff they're doing, and that gives you a psychological visibility into one another. Right? You manifest yourself. In Greek, psyche is the animating, vital self, the vital principle of life. We call it soul, but today's language has that connotations of Judeo-Christianity that was foreign to Aristotle. Right? We have the word psychology, right? The mind, right? So what somebody's interior mind and consciousness contains. Who they are as a person is made visible through their choices and actions and their words over time, getting the psychological visibility into another. And only then, Aristotle argues, they can help actualize the best in us. He has beautiful language. He says the already good people can help make one another even better through their example of themselves. And he says noble people can help others become even more ennobled. So friends help friends become better over time. And we're going to do a writing exercise a little toward the end, actually inquiring about helping friends become their best versions of themselves. So I want to keep in mind Thelma's point. Marcia?
Well, I just wanted to bring up something, another aspect that Nathaniel Brandon talked about in terms of what you're saying, psychological visibility. He wrote about the fact that we only understand ourselves as a process from the inside. You know, we know ourselves from one. We don't ever experience ourselves as a whole personality, like a whole person. And so a friend can give us a reflection of ourselves in that way. So that's like a psychological, it's fulfilling a psychological need we have to experience ourselves as a whole person.
Yes, and a slide that's going to come up in a couple of slides from now has to do with the nature of the self, and having others speak to that can fill in the gaps. How many of you have learned things about yourself through friends? There were things I had no idea I was doing or ways I had of being until other people were like, do you know that you do? I was like, I do. And next time you do it, I'll point it out. And it's like, wow. And it's, at first I was like, wow, you're like really paying attention to me? And then I was like, oh, wow, you're paying attention to me. You see me. Right? So that visibility, it just underscores the visibility and how they help fill in the gaps of seeing who we are. And friends, right, they're benevolent, right? That's part of what makes them the character friends, is they're benevolent toward one another. They're going to do it in a very supportive way, encouraging and helpful to help bring out the best. So they're going to be like, you know, you do that thing. Blah, blah. It's like, whoa, I thought you were my friend. Like, friends don't attack one another like that. They help actualize the best in one another through mutual discourse and respect to lift you out and up for yourself. And this actually, in talking through this is Aristotle. I haven't even gotten to the Rand part. This is Aristotle. We can see how much his views must have influenced Rand, and a way in which he, through her characters and her words in her nonfiction work, really deeply was influenced by his view of human relationships and the power of character friendship, what it could do for us, which takes us to the point about love being selfish. And what does that mean? I think we got a lot, almost everything that shows up in Rand's view of the nature of friendship and love is kind of compressed in Aristotle. And so I'm just going to like bring it out in the way in which Rand talks about it and Smith summarizes that. So love being, so we can already see how like friends are valuable for us, but just to tease out of Smith's text, we have to recall something from the Micro and Ayn Rand presentation on the virtue of productivity. We have spiritual needs. Why do we need friendship? Right, we've all been talking about and assuming like friendship is valuable and a good, and we definitely care about it. I think I've heard almost every single person in this room talk about it. It matters that much to all of you. Friendship. It must fulfill a need. Why? We may be physical beings, but as we saw with the production of material and spiritual values, we also have spiritual aspects to us. What could that possibly mean for someone like Rand who is not religious? She tells us by spirit or soul, she means your consciousness. And this is kind of like what Aristotle was talking about, your character, your mind, Your consciousness is your faculty of awareness of how you come to know the world outside of you and the world inside of you. Your mind, your emotions, feelings, all of what's going on inside of you is the active faculty of awareness, which takes work to know. As we can be seen, it takes work to become and be a friend. And so friendship takes a lot, but it's anchored in this need. We are these beings, these conscious beings, very complex beings that we are, and friendship plays a vital role in becoming who we are. And these spiritual needs for this variety of values, whether it's knowledge, art, friendship, romantic love, all must be achieved through and experienced by our consciousness. The deep satisfactions of friendship are interior to us. They're demonstrated exteriorly, but they're experienced inside of us, and we cannot deny that we have those needs. And to some people, friends are more important than others in the integrated values of your life. But I never run into somebody to whom friends don't matter at all. There could be some hermits out there, and there definitely are some worldviews who try to downplay the importance of friendship. So there are challenges to this view. There's some people say, no, friends distract you from focusing. Somebody who's ascetic, who wants to disconnect from the world, and to be left to contemplate whether it's in a religious tradition, right? Somebody who's going to remove themselves from the bonds of human society, take a vow of chastity, and want to be able to focus on a different version of spirituality. Those are very few people. Bill, is that a hand?
Yeah, no, I was just, and then I often think, but I just wanted to point out that what spiritual means, since you also said knowledge and art, brand work is spiritual.
Oh, absolutely, that's what I was talking about on Monday.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just
Yeah.
didn't want people to, and for sin, but yeah, that one's work, purpose, their why, or whatever else is, it's not a separate thing. It's part of our spiritual.
Yeah, absolutely. And tomorrow in the Meaning of Life presentation, I'm going to do a deep dive into exactly that. So I owe you. But thank you for underscoring that, because yes, all of these, the interior portion of the material connection, like friends are people out there in the world, but friendship is not reducible to just, your physical system. It's like, wait a second, a friend isn't a physical system. Like, well, it's carried by, right? Your consciousness is located in you somehow in this complex, amazing way. It's in that interchange between how we communicate our consciousnesses to one another. And that's the spiritual aspect of this. So the vast majority of humans have this spiritual need. And maybe all of them do, and some of them repress or deny it. I don't know. I don't want to get into that particular debate. But having ethics developed for the vast majority of people is what we're looking for, and that's what the ethical egoism is about. The next point, so this just underscores, this goes back to that slide that you were referring us to, about we have to produce spiritual values. Production is work, it is creation. Friendship doesn't thus fall in your lap. So we have spiritual needs, which means we have spiritual values to stock our lives with, and those are going to take work. And so friendship, like any other value you seek, take work to gain and or keep. The nature of love. Yes.
All I'm going to say on it is I'm finding this very interesting and deleted and very rush of flow, but people in this room who are going into business are going to be asked to create a culture, a business culture, a corporate culture, to do things to engage employees so that in fact employees like and love their work. They're not going to be given any direction on what that means. You're providing such direction if there is. And
no, absolutely. And so because when people hear the word love, of course they go right to romance. And on Rand's view, if to love is to value, anything you value have some, and she talks about measuring love. She says, you think you can't measure love? Well, it's not like measuring, don't bring out your tape measure and say, how long is my love? Like, that doesn't make sense. That's a category mistake in philosophy. Or what color is your love? Like, what? No. It's not a thing, right? It's a quality. And I'll get into, unpack this in a moment. But he does say we can measure it because it's the strength of the emotional attachment and the meaningfulness and significance to the centrality of your values, right? So if you say, wow, I really love ice cream, you're like, okay. What you probably mean is, I really like ice cream. I love my friends, and I'm really in love with my sweetheart, Robert. That's a way to express the spectrum of measuring love, right? Because if I'm, and I'm not, and you also might want to distinguish like objects from people, right? So in terms of like, what's your favorite album? Rush, 2112. I'm a prog rocker, unapologetically. Okay. But the thing is, I can say I really love, Rush is my favorite band, by far. And then Yes is a close second. Then we can go on. But the thing is, I can talk that way, but I'm in the category of objects in the world or music. If I'm talking about people, I'm not going to say, okay, I'm doing it. It's not like, I'm going to say, okay, and in people, right, I love my sweetheart, I can tolerate my brother, whatever it is, I don't like that person, right? So you can do the gradation. So there is measurement there, but it's all translated into value. You mean you value that person really highly. And what that means is you desire or care about, you find significant, they matter to you. And if you're indifferent, you're indifferent. But if you value, you care. And there's a strength of caring, and it's going to show up in pursuing. If I said, I really love that person, and I don't pursue anything, somebody might say, do you really? Because your actions don't match your words. If you really do, you will pursue. There's a subject, there's an object, and there's a relationship. And the relationship isn't just a passive thing. It takes action, enacting it in the world. So that's a very broad and abstract way of talking about the nature of love on Rand's view. This is a quotation from her. If you want to analyze love as the emotional dimension, like what's going on inside of you, her view is that there are two aspects to it. On the one hand, love involves a highly positive, pleasurable feeling that one has as an effect of loving someone. When you're drawn to somebody and you're like, have that warm, whatever it is it's difficult to describe, where I'm trying to use my words to represent what that means to me, and I see some nods, and some people are not quite there yet. Like, I haven't used the right words to get at your emotional experience. But that feeling is an effect of loving the person, or at least having an attraction toward the value of that person in your life. Importantly, Rand adds that love is also a judgment one has about someone's qualities that cause you to love that person. This is the part that, when you add it, is very foreign to people. That you love me for qualities of me. It's not unconditional. I don't magically just like walk into a room and I'm like, I love you. You'd be like, what the? I didn't see that coming. Like, why? Like what you said before, Thelma. They click like or they follow me. Why? Just because of what I look like? Or do they even know my personality? Do they know me? Me. This is what love is selfish, right? How can you, let me see if it's on the next slide. Yes. The selfish value of friendship, we're going to go right to the bottom. It's grounded in self-love. There's values you have that you're proud of about yourself. You're like, yeah, this is great stuff, or I wouldn't love it. It is part of me. Valuing requires a valuer. I, with values, love you with values. I see your values. I'm evaluating you. And sometimes people are like, oh my God, you're being all judgy. Well, judgmentalism is different from making a judgment. Right? If I were to say, I find you inquisitive, reliable, ambitious, personable, do you start to feel seen? Okay. I'm actually saying these things about you, Thelma, that I've come to know just this week. So that put a smile on your face. So at least I see a little bit more of you than what I could see on your LinkedIn profile, right? And so I clicked like, because I was like, oh, she really enjoyed that. And wow. So I'm evaluating, I made a judgment. I am starting to care about you because I see you, but I see you. This goes to start to show how being an egoist or being selfish, it means that you're the ultimate beneficiary of your actions and your connections, but not the only one. I don't want to be, sitting up in the tree all by myself anymore. That was fine when I was 7. Inexperienced, immature, rational faculty not developed. But as I matured and my psychological and spiritual material needs developed, I came to realize, that's not fun, reading by myself and talking to myself, and I can't see or know everything. It's a lot of fun. It's wonderful to talk with you about these things. This is how your self-interest is promoted partly through the relational connections, the values you pursue with others who share those values with you. This have to be perfect, right? We're not carbon copies of each other. And the not being carbon copies of each other is going to start to take us into the next section. So you need a self who values, who sees that others are part of their value. You're going to start including the well-being of others in your well-being. Right? How well you do helps me do even better. I have to love another for his own sake in order for that to happen. So this is where quickly you have to go from the subject to the object. You need a real me, but that requires a real you. The nature of the self. We already started talking about a lot of this. Who is a self? So we need a me, we need a you. What does that mean? 2 selves. It's neither a blob without characteristics. Like when somebody says, I love you unconditionally. It's like, so it doesn't matter what my characteristics are. I can just exist. I may as well be a rock. I'm not a blob with no characteristics. Or for my non-essential character, like, oh, you're that lady with the long hair. I love long hair. And I'm like, wait, I can't tell you how many times, and I don't mean to generalize, but it seems to be a pattern, whether there's anything to little old ladies in supermarkets. Almost never fail to come up to me and they're like, oh my God, I love your long hair. And I'm like, and so they go to touch it or start braiding it. I'm like, I have never seen this person in my life. It's like, oh dear, they have a long hair fetish. I'm walking really fast and checking out in the supermarket. It's a real phenomenon. It's very bizarre. But it's like, so you like me for my hair? Like, what the? You do not see me. Like, this is that, you like me for who I am. Who am I? Who are you? Your essential characteristics, what matters to you, your values, your thoughts, your choices, all the things that have gone to you forming your character. That is you. You are responsible for it. The indivisible, unified locus of consciousness. Over time, you stocked the values of yourself with who you created. I had that self-made man statue image at the end of the first presentation. But that sounds very abstract. I take it that all of us in here liberty lovers? Who's a liberty lover? You like having freedom? Or would you like to live under totalitarian dictatorship and not be allowed to choose to do anything? All right, so if you, okay, now it's a low bar. It's okay, no, you don't have to raise your hand. So there are a lot of liberty lovers here. Would I just say, okay, I equally love everybody because we're all liberty lovers? Well, it's a start, right? You know, that's a certain benchmark for connecting through values. However, love is not abstract. We are not interchangeable. It's not like, okay, I need to stock my life with 3 liberty-loving friends, 1, 2, 3. I'm done. No, that's not how it happens. Rand has this beautiful quotation in Art and Sense of Life. Oh, here comes the red dot again. Yes.
Well, I want to say just a little bit.
Yes.
But the relationship between how you're characterizing essential characteristics and
non-essential
characteristics. Like suppose, skin and hair and all of that.
Yes.
Suppose you're meeting me for the first time, and I haven't bathed in 5 years.
Okay.
So I'm really still bad. My skin color is all mottled and diseased. I suppose also suppose I have a Hitler mustache. And so it seems really weird to just say, oh, that's just hair. Mm-hmm. So that's not relevant, or that's just your skin. That's not relevant, it's not essential.
Okay.
So how do we?
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't want to, I was trying to skirt through this only because your next presentation is on, Rand's essay on racism.
Yeah.
I didn't want to tramp too much on this about the difference between essential versus non-essential. But you're bringing up, okay, it's not that appearances matter for 0. If there's somebody who has clear signs of a contagious disease like leprosy, and you're coming at with me with your leper hand to say, no, if you know what leprosy, it is highly contagious. You do not want to have skin contact with someone with leprosy, and it will degrade. You can look it up. I actually don't look it up with images, please. Or it's definitely not before lunch. It is very sad and unfortunate, but leprosy is will eventually kill you. And it's not, so if I see someone coming at me with leprosy and I recognize what it is and I've not misidentified it, I'm not going to be doing the handshake. I'll be doing live long and prosper from a distance. All right, so.
There was an antibiotic.
Okay, well that's wonderful for people with leprosy, but I'm glad to hear that. Things have advanced since medieval times. But this is just to go to Stephen's point, that there are some things, if somebody's walking around and they haven't bathed for 5 years, is it because they're bedridden and nobody's been able to take care of them, and like, we can get over this, I got some Febreze, I'll spray at you before I come in and help you clean it, whatever. Or is it that you're like, look, don't. So there are some signals that can be more easily identified as why you didn't pay attention to it, and others like the Hitler mustache. Maybe you just like having that little mustache and you've never heard of Hitler. Okay, before I leap to conclusions, right, you gotta be careful. Don't leap to conclusions or write people off. So you have to be careful about not being too judgmental quickly about those sorts of things, and you can be more forgiving with children who don't know any better or who are in circumstances than people who are older. You're like, really, you're 50 and you never learned about Hitler? You have no idea what the Hitler mustache thing's about, right? So did you know that people in the neo-Nazi movement, whatever, they do these things to signal their membership, and it's a warning sign. So, but somebody might be unaware. I don't want to presume. Some things are more easy to tell, but that you know only by talking, right? This is how Bill talked about, how do you solve these problems? You talk them through. You ask, did you know you're smelly? Have you taken a shower recently? Did your shower break? Some people actually have no sense of smell and they can't tell that they're smelly. Okay, I know you're shaking your head because it's kind of gross, but I try to cut people slack. Thank you for asking about this, and I'm sure you'll do a much deeper dive this afternoon on the topic, but essential versus non-essential, like some things you can help, some things you can't. What do you have control over? But I was talking more about things like, I'm 5'7", and if somebody's like, yeah, I don't make friends with people who are 5'7", I was like, wow, you're writing off people based on something they couldn't help. It's not like I can't take, like, if I, want me to be 6'2", like, there's nothing I can do about that. Okay? I mean, I could, I'm not going to change the color of my hair, right? Isn't there a Billy Joel song? Don't go changing to try to please me, kind of thing. Right? That's the, so if you want somebody to like you and like, oh, I think he only likes blonde women, I'm not dyeing my hair. You don't like gray hair, tough cookies, right? Then go ahead and leave if you were that shallow to begin with, because that's not who I am. Who are you, right? So this has to do with the centrality of you as a human being, your character, your person. What is central to you? Essential to you. But you is the unique, unrepeatable, embodied you. I want to go back to the liberty lover point. For those of you who raise your hand, defenders of liberty, some of you will end up becoming really great character friends with one another, and others of you will, you'll be in one another's lives, or you might lose touch. And it's not an adverse judgment against you as a person. It's just that sometimes people are drawn toward particular unique embodiednesses. And for some people, a sense of humor is really important. And other people, what they want is like hardcore intellectual conversation 24/7. And other people are like, wow, that's too intense for me. So, and that's fine. Or some people are more athletic and they want people who they can talk to while they're swinging the pickleball racket. What do you think about Aristotle and that embodied version of a liberty lover you may be drawn toward, right? So the people express and manifest their uniqueness in so many different ways that are not always easy to pin down, but you're drawn toward that particular unique, unrepeatable, irreplaceable consciousness in the world rather than to others. And there's nothing wrong with that. This helps us have an authentic connection with the other. So friends need to see one another. We already talked about psychological visibility earlier, and Marcia helped us delve into that. The valuing has to be grounded in the real qualities of that person. This is part of loving who that person as the unique individual is. Not based on a fantasy notion of who you would like the person to be. Have any of you had the experience of somebody putting you on a pedestal or of describing you in ways that are not entirely familiar to your conception of yourself? Okay, and you're like, wow, you have a glorified notion of who I am. That sounds like really nice, but I don't know that version of Gabrielle. And how does that make you feel?
Kind of bad for listeners, because it was like, no, I'm not really like that. Wait.
Oh, okay, and so.
Relax.
Oh, okay, relax. Like sometimes people are like, oh, so you're the director? Sorry? Your particular position in your leadership role.
And I'm actually a board of advisors.
A board of advisors and Students for Liberty. And
the other one, UJL.
Okay, and so.
Local coordinator.
Yeah, so if there's somebody they're like, oh, here's this guy with this title. Oh my goodness, he's this. And so you've had that experience of being like, oh, you're up there. I can't possibly talk. I'm not worthy. Yeah. And you're like, oh my goodness, no, I'm Gabriel. Talk to me. Right? So it's hard to connect authentically with someone who doesn't really see you, right? The value you get from the other person depends on them being them. You have to, the only way you can love a person for his own sake is for him to be him for his own sake and you for your sake. Right? That's why you love the person. If you don't have that, I know this is not quite the same domain. When I did a search for this, I had to look up cake fail. It's like when this happens. There's the idealized version somebody has of you. They want to see you like this. This is their view of you versus the real me. Right? And I know this is not the same domain. It's a cake fail. Somebody wanted to make a cake that looked like that, and this is what it ended up looking like. But I assure you, if somebody would say, oh, Carrie Ann, you're so glamorous and suave, and you should be on the cover of Vogue, I'm like, I don't know what Carrie Ann, because guess what? That's me over there. I don't wear makeup. I don't do my hair. I'm wearing the same clothes for 25 years, not every day in a row.
Okay.
But no. But I guarantee you, if you saw me at a conference 25 years ago, I did wear this outfit. It's one of my conference outfits. I like it. I like what I like, and I stick with it. So so I'm not going to be on the cover of Vogue. That's the point of the story. That's me. If you think this is me, you don't see me, and we can't have a character friendship. You don't love me for who I am, but your idea of who you want me to be, that's instrumentalizing me. Egoists don't instrumentalize the other. Egoists respect the other, because you can't connect with the other to get the value from the other until you have the other who that person is.
I just wanted to ask, like, I have character friends. We're close. We shared things together. I enjoy the person's company. We talk and we've been together like for years, like a girl. But sometimes I still feel lonely in the friendship.
Okay, well that's there are a couple of things that could be said. You have to introspect to figure out what are the moments occurring when that happens where you feel lonely or disconnected from somebody who's a character friendship. And maybe it would take, do you have a mutual friend who observes the two of you? Okay, and so maybe you might, if you feel comfortable talking to another person who, and this is where the psychological visibility point that Marcia was drawing out earlier is very helpful, maybe a third person can see the dynamic with the two of you, and when that person might notice, when so-and-so is like this, you seem to be kind of down, or the energy changes, and so maybe they can help you figure out when that occurs. So if you want to deepen that relationship and remove the disconnection, it takes introspection and conversation. So in short, it takes work. This is how you transform business and life. So I'm leaning hard into the life side of the conference theme today and tomorrow, but it's all connected to work. It takes work to do that. And if you're looking for more, there's clearly a spiritual need. There's a gap. And so I don't want to probe that too much, but for anybody who's experiencing that, there's something missing, something more. That's the avenue into that, is introspection and noticing when it comes up and talking to other people who might know the two of you to help get that visibility onto the situation. And at the moment, that's the most I think I could say, if it's helpful. Because you want, maybe it's this phenomenon. I don't know what the phenomenon is, but maybe sometimes this happens and then you're over here like, yo, this is me. or maybe they're trash talking you and you're like, hey, you're treating me like this when I'm like this. But it could be the reverse, right? Marcia?
Sometimes there's parts of you that person doesn't understand, and then you feel like you're not. Okay. I kind of think of my relationships in a Venn diagram with overlapping here or here or here, and there's only a few people that are overlapping in all the respects. So if there's something missing, then they don't understand about you.
She just says, open.
So if friends have complaints, they may be grounded or they may be groundless, right? This is where actually, let's go back to Professor Hicks's first presentation on objectivity, because this person could be raising something that doesn't in fact have grounding in reality, but is something, maybe she's misunderstanding about the nature of openness, or missing something, or has a feeling that's not grounded in something, in which case she has work to do to let go of that. I don't know, but I'm just thinking out loud of possibilities, because don't always blame yourself. But it may not be necessarily a matter of like, I'm blaming, who's to blame? But let's figure this out together, because if you care about each other, you'll do the hard work of resolving that sticky point. Richard?
Yeah, what do you think about this idea of not sharing, or the friend not feeling like you're open enough? It took me a long time to figure out that one part of friendship is give them inside information. Tell them stuff you would not tell anybody else, and they kind of know that, instead of waiting for them to like interrogate you. So your friend is not someone who's like supposed to interview you and get stuff out of you, but you can obviously select and choose what to give them, and they can see that it's precious, important, and they might share something on their side for the same, intimate state of my marriage, state of my health, and notice if it's wrong. We have this expression of TMI.
Oh, yeah. Too much information.
It's too much information. But the opposite of that is just the right amount of information that it kind of creates a glue. But you choose it. You know what's in there that they don't know.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the reasons friends share secrets. Can you keep a secret? I think that's part of it.
And that's good. That's so you can signal the specialness of what you're revealing. Like, I haven't told this to anybody before because, and this is also a crucial part of character friendship, it's you trust the person. And so you wouldn't, you want to have a certain amount of vulnerability, right? This is where egoists who realize you have to, and I'm going to sum up fairly quickly here. I have to skip a couple of slides, but you have to show some of who you are. You're not going to walk around like, hey, here's everything about me and about my life. And let me blah, blah, blah. You're like, whoa, you just overwhelm me with a tidal wave of you, right? That's, and some people that it may have that kind of more ebullient personality and that you may be attracted to that. And other people find that off-putting because they think it's too much too soon. And so you kind of roll it out slowly. And sometimes at a certain point, like it gushes out and you're like, oh, now it's taking to the next level of friendship. But in that context, to make sure that the other person knows that you are willing to be vulnerable the way friends are, you flag the specialness, like, I trust you so much. And that could be a solution to the openness to one another issue, so for the authentic connection. But also somebody could be asking for something that's unreasonable. You have to talk it out, though, to figure out where the line is and what the cause is. Because just because people say stuff doesn't mean make it so. Okay, so we already talked a bit about enacting friendship, so I'm gonna skip over this. So you want the person to be who the person is, but don't be afraid to challenge the person to be their best selves. And Thelma asked earlier about somebody who suddenly chose after 10 years to do something not cool. You don't drop them. You valued this person. Person plays a valuable role in your life. You help him become his best self and lived up to his highest values. And that's how you keep the person being who he is for his sake, which is valuable to you for your sake. And that means you don't manipulate your friends or lie. You demonstrate your care and concern, even in the case that Smith mentions, which is in Brand's Ethics of Emergencies. If you love someone, you value them so highly in your hierarchy of values, you're willing to put your time, your money, and perhaps even willing to risk your life. If they're one of your highest values in your life, you are willing to risk your life to save them. Because without them, maybe your life is not worth living or it's so significantly diminished, you'd be crushed. That is not selfless. That is not a sacrifice. That is integrity and loyalty to your values, to yourself. To do that for them, for you. And this is actually part what I'm going to go over, a couple of minutes. That I promised you about constitutive value. This is the relational aspect. And this is really essential because when people say they're worried about the egoist instrumentalizing others, what they're thinking of is here's me and my life is out here and my happiness is out here. And somehow I need this person to get this, or I need other stuff to get that. Your life and your happiness are not things out there. When people say, I'm waiting for my life to start, I was like, oh, guess what? You're a little late because it started the day you were born. It's never stopped, and it won't stop till you drop. So, and what is your life? Well, guess what? Your life and its quality, whether it's happy or sad, is here. My life is work, friends, romance, hobbies, art. My life is constituted by the values I stock it with. My life is not separate from these things, an abstraction out there. None of this is instrumental to that. It is constitutive to it. This is why it's constituted by it. That's why I use the word constitutive value. Your life is constituted by your values, and if you've got good values and you're achieving them, you're happy. And if you stocked it with poor choices, and it's degrading the quality of that life you've got, you're sad. You're unhappy. So if you want to have a good, happy life, stock it. Be careful of who your friends are. And I'm going to take us to the takeaways, and I'm going to yet again have to give you the writing prompt separately, unfortunately, but I will show you after I do the takeaways. I'll go back to the slides so you can write down the questions. Takeaways from this: be a beacon, be yourself to be a beacon for others to see the real you without TMI. Thank you, Richard. When you see that good in others, reward that with your best. But that doesn't mean to rest on your laurels. Oh, they love me. I can just keep being me no matter what. It's like, no. It keeps taking work. So embrace the constructive criticism and challenge from your friends to learn and grow, and do likewise to them. Because friendship facilitates flourishing for you and them. Because they constitute the value of your life. And I'm going to go, I know you raised a hand, Rodrigo, sorry. I'm going to go back to the exercise slide, which we won't have time to do and have a discussion on, but it doesn't mean you can't write it down, and we can have discussions later. If you want to take pictures of this or write it down. This actually goes back to a question that Thelma asked earlier, and I had a big IOU. And because we had such a wonderful conversation and questions all along, I don't mind that we can't do this now because we've got lots of value out of the conversation we have been having. But Thelma's question earlier, I said there's a writing prompt I have that addresses that exact issue. And this goes to this Aristotle argues. He talks about when is it proper to end friendships. And he says it takes a lot, especially if you've got character friends. It takes a lot to undo them. It's not that you shouldn't decide to cease being friends with someone in certain contexts. However, if you've got a character friend who starts to wander down a bad path, he says if he can be set right, we should try harder to rescue his character than his property. If your friend's house were burning down, you would do what you could to help that. He says if you see your friend's character burning down, you work hard to save that for his sake, for your sake. And so when I thought about that, I was like, have you had the experience of helping a friend rescue his character? If so, how did you do it? And if you missed an opportunity, and if you were to see it again, what could you do differently to help the friend rescue his character? Because it matters that much to you. And when you do that, they'll realize how much it matters for them. I know, Rodrigo, you had a hand up. No? Is it back down?
No, yeah.
Okay.
So there's this idea in behavioral psychology that says that you are not who you are or who you think you are, and you actually are who everyone sees you as. So how I project myself, because sometimes I know it's a very second-handed view, but sometimes I would do some things that are not conscious to me, and some other people might pick up on. So when they see that, they take that as one of my characteristics that I don't have yet figured out that I do something. So how do we connect this? Again, understanding it's a second-handed view of what I am, but how do we go around this?
That's a fascinating question. I think it connects to something Marcia was talking about earlier about the psychological visibility component And sometimes people who aren't close friends may notice things and say things. So you can't write off, oh, look at the source. If somebody's spoken something truly, you should pay attention to it. But at least with character friends, you have their trust, and you know that they've seen you in different contexts, and you have that trust and vulnerability where they can point out things, because we're not omniscient. Introspection is really hard work. There are lots of patterns we may have developed as we were growing up that we don't realize and don't understand the effects of, or how things can be taken. So there can be a secondhand understanding of what you were saying, like if we are only what others see us as. I think that's false. I think there's a lot going on under the surface that a lot of people don't see, and you are you, no matter what other people see or say about that. But what other people can do and the role they can play in helping you, put up a mirror to yourself is do you know there's this thing you do or a way you have of being? It's happened to me too. Just one little sticky point and a little mini anecdote, and then I'll wrap it up here and be quiet for now. I had a really difficult time for a long time accepting gifts graciously. I loved giving gifts to people, and I got pushback on this a little firmly, saying, if you could accept gifts a little more graciously instead of being like, oh, you didn't need to get me anything, don't spend that much money. They're like, you need to be a better egoist. Do you get a lot of joy out of giving gifts to people? I notice you do it a lot. And I was like, yeah, I love selecting, and I know that you really like this thing. Like, would you let me have that experience of doing something that gives you joy, because I take joy in it? And I was like, I always felt at first devastated, like, oh my goodness, I didn't know I was depriving you of the experience I take deep joy in. And I was like, all right, I just learned something about myself, the ungracious gift receiver. And I've worked hard to change that, because I realized that what they spoke was true, and that they helped me see something I was not consciously doing. I had to examine why I was like that and to work on changing it, because it mattered to me to change it. I did not want to be an ungracious gift receiver. And they helped me see it in a different light. So friends help you flourish in so many ways, and you never stop learning. Don't stop learning from them. So thank you very much.